Speaker, can I associate this side of the House with your tributes to Lord Wallace and to Lord Flight? And can I pay tribute to Captain Philip Gilbert Muldowney of the 4th Regiment Royal Artillery? He died on the 25th of January. He was an outstanding young officer. And can I convey the condolences of the whole House to his friends and family? Can I also inform the House, as you know, Mr. Speaker, that my honourable friend, the Armed Forces Minister, is today in the Norwegian High North on reservist training. When we said we would boost the reserves, this is the defence team delivering in person. Turning to the question, Mr. Speaker, my message to great British businesses of all sizes is that we want the UK to be the best place in the world to start and grow a defence business. That's why we set a target to spend an extra £2.5 billion with SMEs by 2028. That's an uplift of 50%. This is a Labour government delivering for defence and delivering for Britain.
Simon.
Thank you. Imcross, a company in my constituency of Stroud, is a sole supplier of flight-critical parts to the Typhoon aircraft and a key supplier for the Vanguard's submarine fleet. They are now on the verge of collapse, and HMRC are filing to wind them up after the owners were prohibited from selling their business on the grounds of national security and sovereign capability. So I ask the Minister, what support is he offering to critical suppliers that are struggling financially, and will he meet with me to discuss what steps we can take to support this company?
So state.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for championing Imcross in his constituency. I think he will accept that it's right that when British companies that do deliver the sort of sovereign UK capabilities he mentions, that we scrutinise hard any sale to foreign firms. Imcross do indeed play an important role in the Typhoon supply chain and the F-35 supply chain, and my honourable friend, the Minister for Defence, Readiness and Industry, will be happy to meet.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Domo, very kind. Domo Tactical Communications in my constituency manufacture drones and communications equipment used around the world. They're having some problems engaging with the MOD on sovereign capability, and the previous Minister of State for Defence Procurement was due to visit them in my constituency, but that meeting has since fallen through since the reshuffle. The Minister on the 25th of November confirmed that he would visit. Can I ask that the meeting is arranged as soon as possible, please?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman points to a firm in his constituency, and it is true that for too long too many small firms have felt locked out of MOD contracts. It is also true that the last government, his government, missed its own targets for SME defence support. And our new Office for Small Business Growth that opened its doors for the first time last week will help turn that around. And at the risk of overburdening my honourable friend, the Minister for the Defence, Readiness and Industry, I'm sure he'd be willing to meet.
Chair of the Select Committee, Tamnan Singh Desi.
Much, Mr. Speaker. UK defence SMEs remain essential to safeguarding our national security. And while drones remain an essential part of modern warfare, so are helicopters. Yet, The Times has reported that our sovereign capability to produce military helicopters could now be under threat because of government indecision as to whether we actually need helicopters or not. Because apparently the Treasury has deemed that they may not be essential to operations going forward. So can the Secretary of State confirm, is it the Ministry of Defence or the Treasury which decides on defence procurement priorities? And also, can he clarify when the decision to award the medium-lift helicopter contract will actually be finally made?
Well, my honourable friend and his committee know a great deal more about this than the Times. He will know that there is a current contract process underway and a competitive process for the new medium-lift helicopter. He will also know that we are working flat out to finalise the Defence Investment Plan, and he will know that as part of that plan we are dealing with a programme of record, a previous commitment to equipment which was hugely overcommitted, it was underfunded and in some cases unsuited to the threats that we face. For the first time for nearly 18 years, this is the Defence Department taking a line by line, building up our plans for the future.
Adam Dance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister recognise that many small and medium-sized enterprises in the defence sector are supported by bigger defence firms? Companies like Honeywell operate on the Leonardo site in Yeovil. Does he therefore accept that if bigger defence firms like Leonardo cannot get contracts like the new medium helicopter contract, we risk losing not just Leonardo but smaller defence firms too?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman, firms like Leonardo are getting defence contracts, and just the week before last, I was in Edinburgh awarding a £450 million contract to Leonardo for a really important part of upgrading our Typhoon jets for the future. Yes, of course, the honourable gentleman is right. The supply chain to smaller and medium firms is often mediated by primes like Leonardo, which is why it's important that since the election, we have let over 1,100 major contracts in defence, and 84% of those have gone to British-based firms.
James Cartledge, Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the opposition, can I associate us with the condolences expressed to the families of Lord Wallace, Lord Flight, and of course the family of Captain Philip Muldowney. Now, Mr. Speaker, last June, from that dispatch box, the Secretary of State promised to deliver the Defence Investment Plan by the autumn. He failed to do so. At our previous orals, in December, he promised to work flat out to deliver the DIP by the end of the year. He failed to do so. With continuous dither and delay, is it no surprise that reports last month indicated the worst sentiment among UK defence SMEs for 20 years? The DIP is well overdue. Can he confirm that it will finally be published this month?
We're working flat out to complete the DIP, and he, above all, having been responsible for defence procurement under the last government, will appreciate just how overcommitted his own programme is, will appreciate the truth of his former boss when he said under 14 years the Conservatives have underfunded and hollowed out our armed forces, and we will deal with that overcommitment, we'll deal with the underfunding, and we'll deal with the fact that his plans were unsuited to many of the threats that we face.
James McCleary, Liberal Democrats. Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. We all know that we must increase defence spending urgently, but we are not hearing many ways to get that moving right away without harming British security in other ways, slashing international development aid or investment in renewable energy, for instance, just robbing Peter to pay Paul. The Chief of Defence Staff has warned that there is a £28 billion funding shortfall. So I want to offer the Secretary of State a practical, costed way to close much of that gap. Defence bonds. This would raise £20 billion over the next 2 years and get investment straight away into capability and the industrial base, including the SMEs we rely on. Will the Secretary of State now give this proposal serious consideration as part of a clear, funded plan to plug the funding gap and get defence investment moving?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I remember when his predecessor stood in this House after the election arguing, like the honourable gentleman opposite did, for this country investing 2.5% of GDP by 2030. The honourable gentleman called for that 13 times before the Prime Minister a year ago said we would do it 3 years earlier than he or the other party. We will look at any potential way of raising the level of investment going into defence. But I just say to the honourable gentleman, he could start by recognising that this is a government that has made a commitment and is making a record investment in defence, the largest increase since the end of the Cold War. And I note that in passing, he seems to be against the way that we will fund this and reach 2.5 and 2.6 next year.
Just to say, we are only on question one. If you can help me, that would be useful. Toby Perkins.
Question number 2.
Secretary.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll just take and answer questions 2 and 17 together. 3 weeks ago, I was in Kyiv. I saw for myself the savagery of Putin's brutal assault on the Ukrainian people, and I saw also their extraordinary defiance. Next week, I will co-chair the 50-nation-strong Ukraine contact group in NATO, and the UK is providing more military support now than ever before, and we will continue to stand united in this House, will continue to stand united in this country, and we will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes.
Toby Perkins.
Well, the Defence Secretary is absolutely right to spell out the strength of our commitment. But there is increasing concern about the extent to which China are propping up both the economic and military capabilities of Mr. Putin and his barbaric regime. So can the Secretary of State tell me what his latest assessment is of China's contribution to Putin's war machine, and what steps we're taking to ensure the international community remains united?
My honourable friend is right to raise this, Mr. Speaker, and as a nation, as a government, the UK will not hesitate to act against those that are supplying and funding Putin's war economy. We've sanctioned a range of organisations that operate in third countries over economic and military support for Russia, including 50 Chinese companies. So we'll continue to work across other nations, with other nations, and to bolster the support for Ukraine and the principles of the UN Charter.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In North Warwickshire and Bedworth, many, like Felicitas in Water Orton, have welcomed Ukrainian refugees into their homes, and they've stood by Ukraine, just as this Labour government has. Meanwhile, Reform-led Warwickshire County Council has removed the Ukrainian flag from County Hall, despite public protest. Given the ever-growing threats of Russian aggression, what steps is the UK taking to strengthen its anti-submarine warfare capabilities?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right that as politicians of any party, we are judged on what we do, not just what we say, and the performance of reform-led councils will certainly come home to roost, I suggest, for his party. But my honourable friend is right, and in this new era of Russian threat, we must ensure that our Royal Navy has the innovation it needs to detect, to track and to deter threats beneath the waves. And so today we've announced a new £40 million contract with a British-based SME to buy new sonar buoys, exactly to be deployed and used beneath the waves to track Putin's subs.
Right, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our Ukrainian friends don't just want to physically rebuild after this devastating war, but recover with a modernised, reformed economy that can attract investment and support their entrepreneurial population. Now, this is something Britain can help with, given our strengths in defence, technology, and indeed as a global financial centre. So could I ask the government to fully lean into these efforts alongside our allies, the IMF, the World Bank, and the private sector, because an economically strong Ukraine is not just good for Ukraine's future security, but ours as well.
The honourable gentleman is entirely right. A strong Ukraine is the key to a long-term secure Europe. He is also right that British defence, British innovation and British financial muscle can help Ukraine in the medium term. I think he'd also recognise that we can contribute to Ukraine in a unique way, having been, since the start of Putin's brutal invasion, the country that has been Ukraine's closest and most reliable ally under both governments.
Graham Belden.
Mr. Speaker, as we approach the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine this month, with reports that Russian troops have killed 12 people and injured 17 others after launching a drone strike on civilians just yesterday, the brutality of Putin's war shows no sign of abating. So can the Secretary of State confirm that the UK will not follow any US lead that undermines Ukraine's sovereignty or territorial integrity? And will he commit to maintaining Britain's military support at current levels or above, ensuring that decisions about Ukraine's future remain with Kyiv, not with Washington or Moscow?
Mr. Speaker, Ukraine's sovereignty, its territorial integrity is at the heart of our determination to stand with Ukraine. We are determined to step up our support for Ukraine, and this House will recognise the brutal attack on those mine workers going to work in order to mine the coal to keep their own Ukrainian citizens warm in this unprecedented cold period in Ukraine.
Richard.
Number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pembrokeshire is at the heart of Britain's defence future. I'm excited about the opportunity for local people, and to help deliver that, I'm proud that it is this Labour government working with the Labour government in Wales that are progressing the defence growth deal for Wales that will help prove that defence is an engine for growth right across Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's increased investment in the defence sector in Pembrokeshire. It represents a real opportunity for businesses and the local community good, well-paid jobs, strong local supply chains, all strengthening our national security. Can the Minister set out what engagements he's had with the local supply chain, as well as any discussions regarding the new munitions and energetics factory in Milford Haven?
Can I thank him? Since I met the honourable gentleman, we've been discussing how we roll out faster the new munitions factories that as a government we're committed to deliver, but also how we can support the growth in skills. And as part of our £182 million for skills in the Defence Industrial Strategy, that includes skills funding for Wales, and the opportunity that the Defence Growth Deal provides is to uplift skills for defence right across Wales, and I'm happy continuing our conversations as to how that can benefit his constituents in Pembrokeshire.
Others to come.
Question 4, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, as the Strategic Defence Review set out, the High North is becoming more important to the UK and to our NATO allies as it becomes more accessible through climate change. We have Royal Navy deployments in the High North, we have Royal Marines cold weather training in Norway, we have Ranger exercises in Sweden and in Finland. We will continue to step up on Arctic security alongside our NATO and alongside our GEF allies.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I thank you, Mr Speaker, for your words about the late Lord Wallace of Tankerness. Jim Wallace was not just my predecessor in this House, but he was a friend and, in fact, my London flatmate for many years. I'm sure that his family and all those who mourn his passing, especially in the Northern Isles, will appreciate your acknowledgement of his contribution. Through the years of the Cold War, the RAF's radar station at Saxford in Unst was the front line of our nation's defences to the north. That was drawn down 20 years ago and is now home to the Shetland spaceport. We've seen the recent activities of the Russian tanker Yanta, the interception of the Bella 1, and with space being identified as a priority in the Strategic Defence Review, will the Government now be reassessing the significance of Shetland and its waters as we look to the developing situation in the far north?
Mr Speaker, we deeply value that the role of Shetland and Scotland in general plays to reinforce the security of the United Kingdom. The fact that there are 9,500 full-time troops in Scotland, the fact there are around 3,000 civilian defence personnel based in Scotland, and the fact that as a government in the last year we put over £2 billion into the Scottish economy to support defence, and the role that Scotland plays in general, part of keeping this country safer, but also defence driving economic growth throughout the UK.
Speaker, along with the Right Honourable Member for Orkney and Shetland, my constituency has an obvious interest in the High North and the defence of the western approaches, and I welcome this £40 million investment in anti-submarine sonar buoys and Operation Bastion to defend subsea cables across the Atlantic. But can the Minister give us a similar assurance about the integrity of cables and between cables and communications between our islands across the Pentland Firth, the Minch, the Irish Sea and even the Isle of Wight?
Well, my honourable friend points quite rightly to a growing level of Russian activity in particular that monitors and potentially threatens our critical undersea infrastructure. He will see the way that we have demonstrated that we see, we understand and we track those Russian threats, that we're working particularly through GEF allies together to deal with those threats, and we will step up that further in the months ahead.
Calm.
Fire, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, the US remains the UK's principal defence and security partner, and our cooperation on defence, nuclear capability and intelligence remains as close and effective as anywhere in the world, keeping Britain safe in an increasingly dangerous environment. As close friends, we're not afraid to have difficult conversations when we need to. Friends turn up for each other, as we did for the US in Afghanistan, and friends also are honest with each other, as the Prime Minister has set out.
Calm.
Can I ask the Minister and the Secretary of State to consider diverting defence spending away from programmes that do not truly protect the British people? Our nuclear deterrent now consumes nearly a third of the defence budget through Trident, a system that cannot be launched without US approval. In pursuing nuclear deterrence and mutually assured destruction, we have drained funding from conventional forces and neglected diplomacy and development that actually prevents conflicts. So does he believe that prioritising nuclear defence over reducing tensions, ending conflicts and promoting peace genuinely delivers security for our people? And if so, can he explain why?
Can I thank him for his question? I recognise it comes from a different point of view than I think many people in this House and in the wider public as well. Our nuclear deterrent is operationally independent. The only person that can authorise the firing of that is the Prime Minister. It is a part of our security apparatus that keeps us safe every single day and has done for decades. As a government, we're continuing to invest in our nuclear deterrent, as we're investing in jobs and skills right across the country that keep us safe every single day. Our relationship with the United States is a key part of that, but we'll also continue to invest with our relationship with our other allies, especially around Europe as well.
Dr. Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Bury St Edmunds, we have many US servicemen living off base from Lakenheath. They are a huge asset and greatly welcome. Would the Minister agree that the US remains our most essential ally and join me in my gratitude for the service of these brave US servicemen and women, so important for our security?
Can I thank my more friend for his question? There are thousands of US personnel stationed in Britain. Their presence here helps keep us safe, as well as protecting American interests as well. We will continue to work closely with our US allies. It is important to do so, and we'll continue to invest in deepening that security partnership with the personnel based here in the United Kingdom to keep us safe in these more dangerous times.
David Reid, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the government admits it cannot ratify the Chagos Treaty without first amending the UK-US agreement on Diego Garcia. But currently, that binding agreement requires Chagos to remain under UK sovereignty until at least 2036. So can the Minister confirm this? If the United States does not agree to amend that treaty, then the UK would be in breach of international law. And more importantly, Mr. Speaker, doesn't this mean that the Chagos giveaway deal is now dead in the water?
I'm sorry he missed my concluding remark at the end of the opposition day last week, but not once did he say why his government started that deal. Not once did he give the details as to the preparatory work that his government was supposed to do to answer his own question there. This deal secures the future of that UK-US base. We will continue working closely with our American allies to progress that deal and to continue those conversations, but I'm afraid all he's asking for here is more uncertainty. We're securing the future of that base. He's just talking it down.
Max Wilkinson.
Number 6, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We entered negotiations on safe participation in good faith. However, no agreement was possible that met our national interests. We will continue to explore cooperation with the EU and its member states that strengthen European security, underpin our NATO first policy, and we're pleased that the government has been able to conclude new defence partnerships with our European partners, including France and Germany.
Wilkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answer. Doesn't this go back to the key problem that faces us as a nation? It's the failed Brexit bestowed upon us by the previous government and their friends in the Reform Party. Ministers have my sympathy in trying to unpick this mess, but they're going too slowly. Brexit is clearly the biggest barrier to us participating in this scheme. Is it now obvious that our best economic interests and our national security are best served by a more rapid reintegration with the European Union?
The biggest security threat facing the United Kingdom is Russia, and we're responding to that by deepening our alliances right across the NATO alliance, especially with our European friends. We will continue to do so. We weren't able to conclude the safe negotiations in a manner that was consistent with the objectives we set out when we started that work, but we will continue to work with them because they're not just our European friends, they're our NATO allies. Their security is our security, and we take that very seriously.
Calvin Bailey.
Mr. Speaker, building European strategic autonomy is vitally important to deter Putin from further attacks upon us. But this is completely undermined by attacks on NATO, the bedrock of our security, by the Green Party. Does my right honourable friend agree
that when our alliances are undermined for superficial political gain, they are, in essence, doing the work of Putin?
For that question. The honourable gentleman is right. In the space of 1 minute, the Green Party leader veered from reforming NATO to pulling out altogether. The growing era of threat is far too serious for this kind of student union make-it-up-as-you-go-along politics, and the only person cheering the rank amateurism of the Green Party leader is sat in the Kremlin. Labour is the party of NATO, and we will stand by that steadfast support for the alliances that keep us all safe every single day.
The rundown cross-person, James McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was reported last night that the Prime Minister wants a closer defence partnership with Europe, and that last November's talks on UK access to the EU's €150 billion Safe Defence Fund collapsed, with France reportedly driving the impasse by demanding an inflated price for UK entry, despite many EU partners wanting to open UK participation. With the UK being Europe's largest defence producer and a unique security partner, not just another third country, will the Secretary of State now reopen negotiations, urge the Prime Minister to raise this directly with President Macron, perhaps in their reported WhatsApp group, and publish the government's cost-benefit analysis for joining SAFE, including the entry price it judges acceptable?
Well, can I thank him for his question? I too want a closer defence partnership with Europe. It's why we set that out with the EU reset announced by the Prime Minister. We'll continue working closely, not just with the European Union, but the European Union member states, majority of whom are NATO members, that will be able to support their security. We are an important player in the international defence scene, and it's important that UK businesses are able to access markets, not just for economic growth purposes, but because it keeps them safe as well.
Glenn Vokes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 7.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I should like to answer questions 7 and 16 together. I thank the honourable members for their questions. Veterans across this country are benefiting from record levels of investment. The new veteran strategy celebrates our remarkable veterans as a vital national asset, with £50 million for Valour and £12 million for the Reducing Veteran Homelessness Programme, alongside Operations Courage, Restore, Fortitude, Ascend and Nova. We are committed to ensuring our veterans can easily access support they deserve when and where they need it.
Vokes.
Veterans in my constituency benefit from the stellar Monmouthshire Veterans Support Hub in Abergavenny. Organisations like this and the volunteers that keep them running are invaluable to our communities. We also have excellent branches of the Royal British Legion and a veterans-informed GP service in Monmouth. As the government's Valour programme gets underway, will the Secretary of State accompany me when I next visit the Monmouthshire Veterans Hub, not only to sample their brilliant breakfast fry-up, but also to see the brilliant examples of what can be achieved by these support hubs?
It's truly wonderful to hear the great work being done in her constituency to support veterans. And far be it from me to get in between the Secretary of State and a fry-up, but I may, if I can, take his place on a visit.
John Whitby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Minister what assessment she's made of the adequacy of housing provision for military veterans, particularly for those with service-related injuries or disabilities, in rural areas like Derbyshire Dales, where there is severe pressure on our affordable and supported housing stock?
I thank the honourable member for that question, and he raises a very important point. Those veterans who choose to resettle in rural areas may face additional challenges to access the services that they deserve. This government is committed to reducing veterans' homelessness, and I note the £12 million that we have spent to do so.
On his birthday, Lincoln John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Minister whose job it is to protect and enhance the moral component of fighting power?
I thank the honourable and gallant member for that question, and happy birthday. I think that to protect the moral component of fighting power is a duty that is, of course, on those of us who have the huge privilege of serving as ministers in this government. And indeed, I'm sure that every officer would also know that they have a role to play as well.
Ms Summer Roberts.
The Veterans Commissioner for Wales has said that veteran support to tackle substance abuse, mental health crisis and also residential services do not exist within the NHS in Wales as they do within the NHS in England. So what steps is she taking to work with the Commissioner and with the Welsh Government to improve access to these essential services? And will she encourage veterans to attend my event in Carnarvon on Sunday, which brings a host of key support organisations together?
I thank the honourable member for her question and echo the excellent job she's done to promote her event. Of course, my commitment to veterans goes across this entire nation, and we must do what we can, where we can, to ensure that veterans, wherever they are located, can access the support that they need. I know that some of the matters she refers to are devolved, but I, of course, work with all of my counterparts across the devolved administrations to deliver.
Shadow Minister Mark Francois.
Thank you, sir. We had hoped to see the Armed Forces Minister here today, but we accept that he is on manoeuvres. More seriously, we learnt last week. Thank you, sir. We learnt last week that the Prime Minister's interest in British Army veterans once even stretched to working with disgraced lawyer Phil Shiner to help prosecute them. What's the Minister's reply to the subsequent comment from General Sir Peter Wall, former head of the British Army, who said of those actions, and I quote, "If that's the Prime Minister's moral stance, then one has to ask questions about how compatible that is with his job of making decisions about putting soldiers in harm's way in the national interest for the defence of the realm." What's the answer to the former Chief of the General Staff about that?
I know that the honourable member who played such a who played such a pivotal role in the previous government's disastrous record on looking after these armed forces, whether it was overseeing horrendous decline in accommodation, real-term cuts to military pay, or indeed the hollowing out and underfunding of armed forces. So I know he is not a details man, but I would just gently remind him that the Prime Minister did not work with that individual or with any organisation, and his role was limited. His role was limited to working with the Law Society on points of law. He actually has a record of representing people who were wrongfully accused or killed on operations.
Mark Francois.
Try this for detail. Why should any British soldier, past or present, or those who commanded them, owe loyalty to a Labour government which contains an Attorney General who once willingly represented Gerry Adams, or a Prime Minister who once wrote a legal treatise on how best to prosecute them under the ECHR? Why, before he was elected to Parliament, did our Prime Minister agree to take formal legal instructions from Phil Shiner, a man hated throughout the British Army for his years of false claims against veterans, for which he was subsequently convicted as a fraudster and struck off? What kind of politicians support our soldiers by helping to sue them?
I think it is well known in this House that the Prime Minister was a human rights lawyer, and so obviously wrote in connection with that. I think what really stands testament to the Prime Minister's support for veterans is the fact that this government is delivering record spending for veterans. We're rolling out the 50 million Valor hubs, and I think that speaks for itself.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've paused IOC for Ajax until the investigations into the safety incidents have concluded. Let me be clear, I want the MOD and our forces to be bold, to innovate and challenge, but they must never compromise on safety. We're preparing a recommendation on next steps with Ajax, and I'll keep this House informed, as I have done since the Exercise Titan storm on the 22nd November last year.
And the best object.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister knows I have a keen interest in this topic. Obviously, we know that there were 33 injuries sustained during Exercise Titan storm. Initial operating capability for Ajax was achieved by General Dynamics on the 23rd of July. And between the 23rd of July and Exercise Titan storm on the 22nd November, there were 3 other exercises: Exercise Scorpion Cyclone, Exercise Cyclone Storm and Exercise Tradewind. I wrote to the Minister last year in a written question and asked him how many injuries were sustained, and I'm yet to receive a response. Could he confirm how many instances of noise and vibration injuries were sustained on those 3 exercises, and whether there were any injuries that resulted prior to him signing off IOC on the 5th of November?
As the Member of Parliament who PQs the MOD the most, it's good to know that he keeps track of all his questions. I'm certain I have replied to that, but I will check when I get back to the department to make sure he has it. We are looking at all the incidents from Titan Storm and suggestions of incidents and potential injuries previously. The injuries under the last government are well documented, but to get to the bottom of what happened and why that information did not flow to ministers ahead of the IOC declaration, we've instigated a number of investigations. I'll continue to keep the House updated with the progress.
Mohammed.
Number 9, please, Mr. Speaker.
Under plans set out in the Defence Housing Strategy, 90% of military homes will be upgraded, renewed or rebuilt. This strategy is backed by a record £9 billion investments over a decade, work which will be driven by the Defence Housing Service. We've also already rapidly improved military homes by delivering our charter commitments, including transforming 1,000 of the very worst homes.
Ajax.
But, Mr. Speaker, I welcome the new publicly owned Defence Housing Service, which is already improving conditions for service families by bringing 4,688 of the 5,088 military homes in the eastern region back into public ownership for upgrade and renewal. Does the Minister agree that we must continue investing in our armed forces, the backbone of our national security, and that after years of neglect under the last government, Labour's £9 billion military housing strategy is finally delivering the homes and support our service families deserve?
Well, my honourable friend is quite right to point out that under the previous government, forces families were severely let down in regards to housing. Under the plans set out under the Defence Housing Strategy, he rightly notes 90% of military homes will be upgraded, renewed or indeed rebuilt.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister very much for that answer. Minister, there's a massive improvement, of course, in forces housing, but there is one at Ballykinler. It's been lying vacant, I understand, Mr. Speaker, for 5 years. It's heated. There's new windows in. There's been lots of work done. I've written to the MOD asking this question: is it not possible with the properties that are not being used that they get used for another purpose? For instance, it could be used for youth camps, for youth groups. It could be social housing as well, because it's secure within Ballykinler. It's a specific question. The Minister may not be able to answer, but I very much appreciate an answer back on that. Thank you so much.
I thank him for his question. As he will be aware, I can't update on that specific instance, but I will get an answer for him. And we are exploring how we can make best use of the existing estate.
Dave Chabot.
Question number 10, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I'd like to answer questions 10 and 22 together. The government's already making the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, with plans to hit in April 2027 2.6% of GDP on defence and 3% in the next Parliament.
Chabot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Britain is facing a once-in-a-generational threat to our national security, with Putin's war continuing in Europe and growing uncertainty about the future reliability of the United States. Will the Secretary of State therefore take up the Liberal Democrats' proposal to issue time-limited defence bonds, allowing the public to invest directly in modernising our armed forces, raising billions for new equipment, while ensuring strong parliamentary oversight of how that money is spent?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I note the arguments that he and his party are now making, but it was just in autumn 2024 that the Lib Dems were calling for this government to set a pathway to 2.5%. And, Mr. Speaker, we went further than that with the largest increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, 3 years before he was calling for it. And we have a plan, of course, to hit 3% in the next Parliament.
Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate what the Defence Secretary has just said, but with President Trump attempting to tear apart the international alliances that have kept us safe for decades, with Putin waging war in Ukraine for almost 4 years, the world is changing fast, and we need to come together as patriots to decide how we can best invest in the defence of our country as quickly as possible. So can I press him again to convene cross-party talks on how we can reach 3% of GDP on defence quickly and ensure defence bonds are part of the solutions?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd welcome the support in the first instance from her and her party for the fact that in this Parliament we will spend £270 billion investing in defence to keep Britain safe and our alliances secure for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that is delivering for defence, and it is delivering for Britain.
Morrissey.
Question number 11, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Veterans of Operation Banner, like all veterans, are benefiting from record levels of investment by this government. The new veterans strategy celebrates our remarkable veterans with £50 million for Valour and £12 million for reducing the veterans' homelessness programme.
Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today was my brother's birthday. He was a veteran who died at age 36, and he would be proud that today I'm talking about the 250,000 veterans of Operation Banner, and they put their lives at risk to fight to keep us safe and free, and those veterans deserve our support. So will the Minister explain why the government no longer believes those veterans deserve to be protected from years more lawfare?
I note the service of her brother. As she well knows, this government is bringing in real protections for veterans, and if she wishes to support legislation that gives blanket immunity to terrorists, that is, of course, her prerogative.
Question 12, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
To deter and defeat aggression, this government is investing in innovation and the latest capabilities for our forces. R&D is critical to maximising defence ability to be an engine for growth, and it's this government that's ensured 10% of our equipment plan must be spent on novel technologies, and we have introduced a £400 million Defence Innovation Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. He will know that investment in defence R&D has tremendous impact on the UK economy as well, not only jobs and crowding in private investment, but spillover effects of new technologies helping Britain to prosper. So, given that, isn't it clear that if the government was to issue defence hypothecated bonds, it would make a brilliant return for the British taxpayer too?
Well, can I thank him for his question? He's absolutely right that defence innovation has considerable spillover positive effects for the wider economy. It's one of the reasons why, as a government, we're investing in technologies that have dual-use potential, not just to give our fighting forces the equipment they need, but wider benefits for the wider economy. He will have heard what the Secretary set out in terms of defence spending, but I welcome his support for defence innovation and investment in R&D.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the last few months, the member for Bournemouth West and I have been campaigning for a new drone centre to be designated at the Dorset Innovation Park. Now, the park already hosts a strong defence ecosystem for testing, developing and researching drone technology. Alongside this, of course, the county has a well-established network of colleges and universities in Bournemouth, Poole and Weymouth, offering the skills that we need to make this a success. So with all this in mind, will the Minister continue to work with myself and all the relevant stakeholders to establish a drone centre at the Dorset Innovation Park, which I know will help to strengthen national security and, of course, secure good jobs? Sorry.
As a fellow West Country MP, can I tell him I recognise the ambition and the determination he has to see more of that innovative technologies, autonomy, drones and other types of new novel technologies create good jobs in his community. I know that he's been speaking to not only myself but the Armed Forces Minister who leads on drones around this, and I wish the businesses in his constituency and the wider region the very best as they innovate to provide our armed forces with the kit they need.
Question number 13, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has stepped up our support for naval shipbuilding. We've secured the largest shipbuilding export in British history, with the Type 26 being sold to Norway, invested in strategically important infrastructure and are driving naval programmes in UK shipyards. The Shipbuilding and Maritime Technology Action Plan will set out our future ambitions to support naval and civilian shipbuilding and maritime technology sectors.
Richard Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I thank the Minister for his response. White Shipyard and Diverse Marine in my constituency do absolutely fantastic work, and they thoroughly welcome the launch of the new dedicated unit to help ensure small defence companies can access MOD contracts. However, given the recent news that a £200 million contract has been awarded to the Dutch firm Damon, what assurances can a Minister offer to companies like White Shipyard and Diverse Marine that it will have a fair and credible route into competing for these major programmes?
Minister.
For his question, Serco have indeed awarded a contract to Damon as part of their provision of tugs for the UK military. We've set out very clearly, Mr. Speaker, our intention that more of our rising defence budget should be spent with British companies, supporting the construction of more naval assets in British shipyards. We'll continue to do so, not just supporting Type 26s and Type 31s being built in Scottish shipyards, but as we move to a hybrid navy, more platforms being built in shipyards right across the United Kingdom.
In room.
Speaker, we could better invest in naval shipbuilding if the government listens to a report that's been published by the National Audit Office, which estimates £1.5 billion a year of defence spending is lost to fraud, and that the Ministry of Defence recovers only 48p in every pound spent on counter-fraud work, less than other departments. What will the Minister do to ensure more of that funding can be recovered for our national defence?
Well, thank you
for raising this question. Let's be absolutely clear. Any money lost to fraud is people taking money away from our national security and our national defences, and it is unacceptable. As a department, we're looking at how we improve and continuously improve our anti-fraud measures. We'll continue to do that, and as we roll out increased defence spending, it is even more important that we spend this wisely.
Cameron Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, question 14, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The United Kingdom's nuclear deterrent is completely operationally independent. Only the Prime Minister can authorise the firing of the UK's nuclear weapons, and even if they're deployed as part of a wider NATO response, £15 billion is being invested in the Sovereign Warhead programme over the course of this Parliament.
Cameron Thomas.
Speaker, if the government wants to make an inroad to the EU Safe Fund via Emmanuel Macron, it could do worse than recognise the foresight of Charles de Gaulle, whose suspicion of the US has been fully vindicated by Washington's national security strategy. Now, the French nuclear deterrent is the only truly independent nuclear deterrent. What steps is the government taking to minimise the UK's reliance on the US for nuclear deterrent servicing?
Can I thank him for his question? Our nuclear deterrent is operationally independent. It supports thousands of jobs up and down the country. We'll continue to invest in the skills required and the technologies required to keep our continuous at-sea nuclear deterrent at sea. We'll continue to invest in that sovereign capability, but we'll continue to participate across defence programmes with our partners, both the United States and in Europe.
Question
15, please, Mr. Speaker.
Who's doing it? Minister.
The Honourable for her question. Armed Forces families absolutely do a vital role in supporting our members of our armed forces to do the role of defending our national security. We are, with our Valour Hubs, our ambitions is that our Valour Hubs will seek to not only support veterans, but also support wider members of our armed forces communities, including families.
Mr. Speaker, another important factor in supporting our brave troops is the provision of military clothing. The last government, the Conservatives, tied us into a contract where around 90% of army clothing is currently secured through overseas suppliers and a significant amount from China. As the MP for Hyndburn, the home of textiles, I have many businesses eager to meet the needs of our British military troops. And so will the Minister review this in order to look at whether British companies can supply these British needs?
I'm sorry a minute. Can you see how you can weave it in? Because it is about families, and I think this is about supply of garments, isn't it? Good luck. Let's have a look.
I know that armed forces families will be very concerned about the kits that their loved ones are wearing. And I know the majority of our clothing is sourced from British companies, but I'm sure my colleague will be happy to speak to her about this issue in more depth.
Alicia Kearns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's over a year since I raised the 5,700 women who were wrongly and unfairly dismissed from the armed forces for falling pregnant while in service. So please can Minister update me what she has done in that time to make sure they get their caps and berries back that they absolutely deserve, because we should be supporting those who want to have families in the armed services.
She rightly raises a very important point. I have had updates from officials on this matter, and I will push for a further timeline to update her on.
We come to Topicals. Rebecca Smith.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Stay.
Mr. Speaker, this month marks 4 years since Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian people continue to fight with huge defiance and courage, recently retaking parts of Kupiansk city, striking military targets deep in Russia, and reporting a Russian casualty rate of 25-1 in some parts of the front line. Putin is increasingly under pressure. He's thrown 17,000 North Korean troops into the fight and recruited thousands more from Africa and other nations. 4 years on, the Ukrainian courage will be matched by our UK determination. Next week, I'll travel to NATO. I'll co-chair the 33rd meeting of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, where 50 nations will step up the provision of military aid and support to keep them in the fight.
Mr. Speaker,
Ministers stress how keen they are to remove obstacles hampering defence innovation, and nowhere is this more important than in my South West Devon constituency, home to the majority of Plymouth's National Centre for Marine Autonomy. Now, the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency has spent the last 12 months or more looking at how to remove licensing obstacles for autonomous vessels like underwater drones. Given Plymouth's marine autonomy sector is set to receive a share of the £250 million defence growth deal, will the Secretary of State commit to putting further pressure on the Government Legal Service or whoever else it will take to get the legislation in place to update the MCA's Workboat Code 3 as a matter of urgency?
The Honourable Lady makes an important point, and the doubling of our investment in this Parliament into autonomy will be directed in significant part towards marine technology. Her part of the world in the southwest plays a leading role in this, and she urges action across government, and I hope she'll see that the shipbuilding and marine autonomy plan that we publish shortly will show exactly what we're doing on a number of fronts.
I was appalled when visiting UK service personnel overseas at NATO airbase to learn that many have been penalised by their home insurer by virtue of being posted abroad, despite the fact that these companies were signed up to the Forces Covenant. Now, this goes against the very principle of the Covenant, so I was glad after writing to many home insurance companies that a few, including Aviva and Hastings, have changed this policy. But does the Minister agree with me that if insurers are going to sign up to the Covenant, they need to make sure they're living up to every single part of its important principles?
My honourable friend makes an excellent point. I know that over 14,000 private organisations have signed the Armed Forces Covenant, and a core principle of that covenant is that service personnel should face no disadvantage compared to other citizens in the provision of public and commercial services. I'm glad that some insurance companies have taken steps to address this particular issue, and I would urge all businesses to ensure their policies fully support the Armed Forces community and reflect their commitment to the covenant.
So, Secretary of State James Cotledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, last August, the Deputy Prime Minister of Mauritius said that when they take sovereignty over the Chagos Islands, nuclear weapons could no longer be stored there. In last week's Chagos debate, in answer to our repeated questioning as to whether this was true, the DRI Minister replied 3 times by reading Annex 1 of the treaty, whereby it grants, and I quote, unrestricted ability to control the storage of all goods, including but not limited to fuels, weapons and other hazardous materials. Does the use of the word weapons in that sentence of the treaty definitely include nuclear weapons?
Mr. Speaker, I've read it to him 3 times. Do I have to read it to him a 4th time for him to start understanding this? No wonder that they don't want to admit they started the negotiations over Diego Garcia. They don't want anyone knowing that because they're clearly not prepared for it, unlike this government that's securing that base.
James Cotledge.
Well, it's interesting that the Secretary of State passed responsibility for answering the question to the Minister next to him. But he didn't answer the question. This is of profound national importance, Mr. Speaker. For us in the United States, these are our most important and sensitive capabilities. When he answered 3 times last week, he read the sentence about the control the storage of all goods, including what limited to fuels, weapons and other hazardous materials. Mr. Speaker, the word nuclear is not there. Does it cover nuclear weapons? Yes or no?
I'm not going to read it to him a 5th time. My God, he's not serious. He's not being serious. He also knows, as a former defence minister, we do not comment on the storage of nuclear weapons. But I'm happy reading it to him again anytime he wants, so he can see the word weapons in there. Tim.
Lorraine Beavers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The announcement to upgrade radar systems of 40 Typhoons is welcome. But none of these Typhoons will be worked on at BAE at Wharton, near my constituency. We cannot afford to leave our nation's air defences in the hands of the USA. So will the Minister commit to an order of British-built Typhoons so we can keep these vital skills in this country and ensure that the British military aircraft industry is not consigned to...
One of us sitting down. Just to say, it's Topicals, and it's very important we get orders for Lancashire. I'm fully behind her, but do it quickly. Come on, Minister. Who starts?
I'll do it. Mr. Speaker, you above all people will recognise the importance of the contract we let to Leonardo 10 days ago to £450 million to upgrade British Typhoon radars, and you will understand, and I say to my honourable friend, that those radars will be a big part of how we sell Typhoons, which will be made and assembled in Lancashire to other nations like Turkey.
Like the further order on the Typhoons, but don't worry, Sarah Dyke.
The need for increased defence spending is clear, but the growing uncertainty over the future of the new medium helicopter contract has left Leonardo in the lurch. Over a year after the company was left as the only tender, it's putting our national defence readiness at risk and the jobs of hundreds of my constituents in Glastonbury and Somerton. As the delay now extends well beyond reason, can the Minister provide an update on the defence investment plan?
As the Secretary of State set out earlier, we're working flat out to deliver the Defence Investment Plan, and we're continuing to speak to our colleagues in Leonardo, not just about NMH, but how we're investing in Leonardo services nationwide.
Sunil Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many injured service personnel face prolonged recovery journeys where access to specialist rehabilitation is crucial. How is the Department expanding the role of allied health professionals within the Defence Medical Service to strengthen rehabilitation, provide joined-up care from injury through to recovery?
Good question.
My honourable friend makes a very important point, and all armed forces personnel are supported by dedicated and comprehensive rehabilitation services. Allied health professionals play a crucial role in supporting the treatment and rehabilitation of armed forces personnel in the UK and on operations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Armed Forces Bill has provisions extending anti-drone permissions to the UK Armed Forces and UK bases. RAF Croughton is a US Air Force base in my constituency. So will these changes give US personnel the same updated authorities that are being extended to the UK Armed Forces?
Good question.
Mr. Speaker, I take that as an early indication that the Honourable Lady might want to serve on the Bill Committee, in which case we welcome her stepping forward like that. I think she'll recognise that the framework for legislative framework that allows us to take the action to bring down malign and menacing drones over UK defence sites and defence bases is long overdue, and I look forward to her support in doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ongoing threat to our nation's security from grey zone activity illustrates the importance of international associations and alliances such as NATO. Does my right honourable friend therefore share my concern at what the leader of the Green Party said yesterday, when in the same sentence he said he would leave and reform NATO? And doesn't it just show how unserious he really is?
We live in incredibly uncertain and difficult times, and it is because of that that the clarity and the strength of our commitment to NATO matters. Labour is the party of NATO. We helped found it, we'll continue to support it, and we'll support NATO allies because the strength of NATO is UK strength as well, and we're going to continue to have a NATO-first approach.
Joe Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, the government sold off our fishing rights in return for access to the EU's Safe Defence Fund, but he didn't get a penny in return. Now the Prime Minister, who's in the chamber, says he wants to renegotiate. Will the Secretary of State please explain what lessons he's learned from the failures in negotiations last year?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman recognised that for the first time we've got in place a security and defence partnership agreement with the European Union. This is part of us stepping up our willingness to work with the European Union. He knows the safe negotiations did not come to a successful conclusion, and that was quite simply because it was not in the interests of the British taxpayer, the interests of British defence industry, and we'll do a great deal more to support the wider security of the European Union and the European nations through NATO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Intensifying security competition in the Arctic necessitates enhanced cooperation with our regional allies. So can my right honourable friend see if the government intends to invite Canada to join the JEF?
Mr. Speaker, the 10 JEF nations led by the UK, established by the previous government, stepped up in terms of leadership now. Support from both sides of the House is an important part of NATO. It allows us to act ahead of unanimity in NATO, and a number of times, from critical infrastructure to exercising in the High North, JEF has led the way and will continue to do so.
Morgan.
very much, Mr Speaker. In my constituency of North Shropshire, complaints about water supply to single living accommodation doubled from 116 in 2018 to 232 in 2024, with 16 separate losses of water for more than 24 hours last year. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss how we can bring single living accommodation up to the standard that our servicemen and women deserve?
I thank the honourable member for her question. Just last week, we launched the Single Living Accommodation Review, which is designed to get after exactly these sorts of issues to ensure that we have the accommodation that our serving personnel deserve.
Lawrence Session-Lermy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, following President Trump's insulting remarks about our hard-working British personnel, my constituent contacted me. He was very happy to hear the Prime Minister condemn that. His eldest son is retired from the Army following injuries, and his youngest son is a medic in the Army. Mr Speaker, my constituent is here today in the public gallery. Would the Secretary of State join me in paying tribute to our hard-working servicemen and women and all our veterans and recommit this government's commitment to serving and protecting our hard-working servicemen?
I can indeed, Mr Speaker, and I welcome my honourable friend's constituent in the gallery today. This is a government that is on the side of those who serve and on the side of those families who support those who serve.
Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Members of the Armed Forces are the only uniformed service without a professional body to represent and support them. Will the Secretary of State give assurances that the Armed Forces Bill will include provisions to establish such a body, ensuring serving personnel and veterans have access to legal and welfare support when faced with vexatious, unmerited or unsubstantiated allegations from within the system or from external litigants working on behalf of other service personnel or third parties?
Thank you for your interest. It is precisely for those reasons that we established the Armed Forces Commissioner, an independent champion for our armed forces and their families. That legislation has now become law and the recruitment process will conclude shortly.
Alice Baker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Our servicewomen are currently not as well protected by in-service body armour, which is designed around male body types, providing inadequate ballistic protection. With testing of female body armour now underway, will the Secretary of State commend the work of MP Aerospace in improving women's safety and commit that the MOD will continue to cultivate vital UK sovereign capability like this?
Can I pay tribute to one more friend who's been leading the charge for female body armour? MP Aerospace are doing a superb job on this. I know she's bringing female body armour to Parliament so we can all see that this is something that can be delivered. We have a strong commitment to investigate and support our female serving personnel through better body armour, and I look forward to working with her to deliver that.
Bradley Thomas.
Mr Speaker, the government has said that we should be bolstering our preparedness for war. Can the Minister tell us when the Defence Readiness Bill will be ready and when he expects it to gain royal assent?
The Defence Readiness Bill was set out in the Strategic Defence Review. We're looking across government as to how we can bolster readiness measures, not just legislative ones, but in policy changes, removing stupid rules, spending more. The Defence Readiness Bill will be something that we're looking to implement later on in this Parliament. The Armed Forces Bill is before this House now, and that's where our immediate focus lies.
Mr Speaker, Task Force Kindred has been a fantastic success of this government. Can the Secretary of State outline if there are plans to extend the programme and how defence SMEs can get on board with it?
I can indeed, Mr Speaker. Task Force Kindred has been at the heart of the UK's rapid response and our reliability as Ukraine's closest ally since Putin first invaded Ukraine nearly 4 years back. It will continue to play a central role in the future, and it has lessons for the way that we need to procure and provide our own kit and own systems for our forces too.
Final question, Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Instead of constantly pushing back the closure date for RAF Halton in an era where we need to increase defence capability, will the Secretary of State actually commit to keeping RAF Halton open for the long term?
The honourable gentleman will know we inherited a base closure programme from the party opposite when they are in government, with announcing closures right across the country. We're looking carefully at what bases we have, how we can use them for military need, and where we can dispose of them, making sure that we can build houses for our armed forces and veterans on that land.
Point of order, Mark Front.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I fear the Veterans Minister, who's still here, may have earlier inadvertently misled the House. According to House of Lords legal records, from the 29th to the 31st of October 2007, in the Al Jeddah case held before the Lords of Appeal in Ordinary, a case against British soldiers, the applicants were represented by several QCs, including the then Prime Minister, who were instructed, it's in the records, by public interest lawyers Phil Shiner's law firm. Would the Minister or the Prime Minister care to correct the record?
State.
Right, honourable gentleman, I will set the record straight, including his remarks before the House this afternoon.
We've had enough of trying to continue this debate. It no ends. We're now coming to the statements. We'll just let the front bench change over.